I'm Tom Carrico, and on behalf of the Center for the Study of American Democracy, welcome. We have, I think, enjoyable evening ahead of us to get to know the candidates. I think everybody knows everybody in the village, of course, but nonetheless, I hope this will be not so much a debate, but really a forum to raise and float some of the most pressing issues and perhaps get to know the candidates a little better. I'm joined by Samantha Scholes, of course, editor of the Mount Vernon News. And let me just go over the format very quickly. We will have opening statements of 3 minutes each. Then we'll have questions posed round robin for 2-minute responses with possible 45-second rebuttal at our discretion. Then we'll have questions posed by each candidate to their opponents. 1 minute to ask the question, 1 minute for each candidate to respond, and then we'll have a closing statement of 3 minutes each. So why don't we kick off with the opening statement, which was tailored to who are you and why are you running for mayor? And according to our straw, Ms. Here, we'll go first.
Hare.
Hare.
Sorry. Thank you, Tom and Andrea Lechleitner, for organizing this event, and thanks to Samantha Scholes for taking time to help Tom moderate the forum. Also, thanks to Kaitchen and Liz for raising the bar and making this election something village residents can sink their teeth into. I'm doing my Donald Trump moment here. Many of you may know me with a hat on. This is what I am otherwise. I'm Betsy Hare, and I'm running for mayor. I own the Gambier House Bed and Breakfast next door to the Crozier Center. I was born and raised in Columbus. After graduating from Smith College, I spent 20 years in New York City as a fundraiser for Manhattan arts organizations, including the New York Shakespeare Festival and the Paul Taylor Dance Company. A career change in the mid-1990s led me to earn a certificate in pastry arts and work as an artisan bread baker at Amy's Bread, also in Manhattan. Desiring to live closer to my family and seek new challenges, I purchased the Gambier House Bed and Breakfast in 2003. During college, I spent 2 summers working for Kenyon Festival Theater and fell in love with Gambier. As so many guests at my breakfast table tell me, it is Eden, Shangri-La, and Brigadoon all rolled into one. It has been my pleasure to make my home and living in the village for the past 12 years, participating in the community as a merchant, arts patron, walker, dog owner, knitter, locavore, and council member for 11 years. All of this is a very long-winded way to tell you that I have the perspective that will best represent the village as we work with Kenyon over the next 4 years. During this time, I expect they will bring forward a number of significant building projects that will require thoughtful and objective review by residents, the Planning and Zoning Commission, and Council. And I believe we need a mayor who will make sure that what is good for the college is good for the village. All 3 of us are capable of dealing with village infrastructure, parking, personnel, finances, and parks. But I am the only outsider. I am not a student, alumna, employee, or employee spouse. It is true that my livelihood is dependent upon the college, but that is the case for most village residents. My heart and first loyalty lie with the village. We live, work, learn, and thrive in a company town and are fortunate that the company is upstanding and responsible. But we all need a conscience, and that's what village government is here to do. I believe that I can work with the college to make choices that will serve all of us. I want community engagement to include everyone in Gambier. Thank you.
Okay. I think I'm going to try putting these on. Hi, I'm Liz Foreman. I'm not going to put a hat on because probably most of you recognize me. I've been here forever. I recently retired from Kenyon, having worked there at a number of jobs, from bagging books in the bookstore. I've been registrar at the college. I've been head of the library, an acting head of the library. I worked for almost 20 years in the admissions office. I'm retired, but I still keep ties with the Young Writers Program at the Kenyon Review. I also have experience outside of Gambier, and one of the reasons why I decided to run for mayor is both to have a chance to do more or additional work that is not always possible when you're a council member. I've been on village council since 1998, so for over 17 years. One of the things that the mayor is responsible for is reaching out to the greater community. I have been a teacher in Mount Vernon High briefly, and as well as in Howard. I've done volunteer in the greater community. So I think it's an interesting time right now for the village where we can begin to take stock in our own infrastructure, but also begin to reach out countywide. And I think that's what excited me about running for mayor, was that opportunity to do that. I will tell you all, I think we have an extremely well-run village. We have a really good staff. I think for a small village, we bring you great services. And I think anyone at this table will continue that. So I don't envy you this election. I think you have 3 good candidates, and all of us will bring different interests to the position.
Well, hello, and I want to reiterate thank you all for coming. I think this is a great forum. Thank you to the Mount Vernon News and Kenyon College and the Center for the Study of American Democracy for hosting this event, and also to the Kenyon Democrats and the Kenyon Republicans for their bipartisan support in co-sponsoring this event. I'm running for mayor, like the rest, I think, because I love Gambier. I'm dedicated to serving others, and I have the skills and experience to run the village well. Some of you already know that the first time I came here was in 1997 to get married in the Church of the Holy Spirit at my husband's alma mater, Kenyon College. I'm not an alum. I'd never been here before, but like so many others, I fell in love with the place. After visiting Gambier many times over the intervening years, our family moved here in 2006. From the beginning, I got involved in local service and government. I've been on the Planning and Zoning Commission for 9 years. I've been the chair for 8. And I'm finishing a 3-year term on Village Council where I've been the chair of the Streets and Utilities Commission and also a member of the Finance and Income Tax Committee. From 2006 on, I've also been a member of Harcourt Parish, spending 3 years on the vestry, and a volunteer at the well-known Harcourt Parish rummage sale, moving through the ranks to become the chair for the last 4 years. Every one of those years, we've beaten the previous year's sales, and this year we made $20,000 gross proceeds. 80% of our net goes to support local charities. Those were 13 charities last year, and we're in the grant application process right now. Those results are a great testament, by the way, to the hard work of lots of volunteers, and I see a lot of you here tonight, so thanks for being here and for your dedication to the sale. But what you might not know about me is that I'm a native Midwesterner who earned an engineering degree at the University of Michigan and worked for 2 years in laundry soap factory, bus factory, truck factory, and a computer factory. Then I earned my law degree at Michigan also and practiced commercial real estate law for 12 years in Chicago until our son was born and I decided to stay home with him. I have never, ever regretted that decision. These experiences combine to give me skills and strengths to meet the challenges of village governance. My legal experience allows me to understand the laws governing the village and follow the changes in those laws and make effective legal choices. I also have the managerial skills to successfully oversee village staff and operations because both my factory and legal work involved supervising people doing many different types of jobs. Let me conclude with my vision for Gambier 4 years from now. I see a village that remains friendly to residents and visitors alike with all of the intellectual stimulation and cultural richness a college town can enjoy, a village that is fiscally sound and well run, a village that has prompt and reliable emergency services, a village that is increasingly vibrant downtown and serves all our residents and guests. And as we move through the questions, I will be happy to explain my ideas about how we might get there. Thank you.
Okay. Does it matter who we start with?
Why don't we start at one end?
Okay. All right. So let's start with Liz. Can you talk about what are the 2 biggest problems facing the village?
In essence, it's always difficult with the village to say there are some problems that demand our attention more than others, but the village is always, what I see the mayor and the village administrator as well as council managing every month is how to allocate our resources and which should have our attention first. I think one of the major efforts that we face in the next 4 years is finishing up work, really excellent work that's been done by our current mayor on getting our infrastructure to an even steadier, more secure place. If you'd asked me this when I first started in council, I would have said water. Water is a huge problem. Water is not as much of a problem, even though I know you all know your bills are really high. We're working on that. We are beginning to deal with water loss with also our sewer plant. That, I think, is going to take a lot of our resources for the next year, probably, and our attention. We also are reviewing, I'm the head of the Police and Personnel Committee on Council at the moment, and we're reviewing and putting into place it's more standardized personnel management procedures. That will take our attention. But frankly, if all of a sudden tomorrow a major water main breaks, that's where our attention will be for at least until we fix it. The village is a very dynamic organism, and running it requires that kind of dynamism.
Oh, dear. Okay. Well, what pops into my mind first is parking. Parking, parking, parking. We always have issues with parking, and I think that we need to enforce parking regulations, which will help things. And I think as building plans with Kenyon move forward, parking needs to be thought about, really seriously considered about who's parking where and how you're going to deal with that. Another problem. Well, Liz has mentioned water, and water is always an issue, but we do seem to have it handled better, and your bills have been going down. I think exploring alternative energy situations it's not a problem, it's an opportunity for us. While it's not alternative, aggregation, I think will prove to be a positive thing for the village, and exploring other power opportunities. Someone's come to us about solar, so that's a thought. And I've also been talking to somebody about wind. So there are other ideas which may help us all with our bills.
Well, I think that there are two issues that occur to me that are the issues that I think that the mayor should be attending to right away. And one Liz mentioned, which is the implementation of, we had a consultant study done this past summer that made a lot of really good suggestions that she's referring to improve the operations, modernize the administration of the village. There are a lot of great suggestions in there, including implementing the village council, implementing a strategic planning process, which we've never had before, and improving things like our job descriptions, employee handbook, employee review procedures, grievance procedures, all these things that also, as Liz said, the Police and Personnel Committee is going to follow up on these really great suggestions. But one thing that hasn't been mentioned that I think is something that the mayor needs to turn her attention to right away is also our emergency services in the village. As we all know, our local fire and EMT services are provided by the volunteers of College and Monroe Township. But we also know that volunteer fire departments across the country, just like us, are suffering from a lack of adult volunteers. Our current mayor, Mayor Emmert, worked tirelessly to try to create a merger with Mount Vernon that eventually fell apart because Monroe Township would not cooperate and because the current, at that time, fire chief resigned. So I think the next mayor really needs to pick that up and get going on that again so that we can have more reliable, more fully staffed fire and emergency services. So I see that as a priority. And you may have noticed in the news recently that Centerburg, their volunteer fire department, is actually working with Mount Vernon to merge. I mean, this is a very common thing in the industry of fire safety, you might say, that the volunteer fire departments are having to be phased out. So that's a really critical issue as well.
Great. Well, thanks everybody for being right on time. So let me move really to the largest employer and revenue generator for the village, and that's Kenyon College. Could you speak a little bit to the relations between the village and the college? What are the major issues and what could be done better? Let's start with Ms. Hare.
Okay. Well, I think that the relationship is generally a good one. We, especially when it comes from maintenance department to maintenance department, I think that they work really well together for the most part. Kenyon tends to, in a general sort of sense, seek forgiveness rather than ask for permission when it comes to certain building things, and that's something that I'm concerned about, and it needs to be addressed. I think, administrations ebb and flow, and I think for the most part we get along and we work well together. We just need to keep lines of communication open to make sure that the right things are happening at the right time. We were very fortunate in the past with the building of Lentz House and ultimately the gallery and the studio art building by having the wonderful Tom Lepley, who kept his eye on and his mind on on Gambier as well as Kenyon to help really facilitate things and make things work as well as they did. And through all of their efforts, his and the rest of the colleges, they discovered a huge water leak that was amazing and helped us a great deal by being willing to replace the water line. So I think we have our ups and downs, but I think it can all work out.
Well, I support what I think of as a cooperative relationship with Kenyon College. I think that the college brings a certain personality to the village, obviously, and there's a lot of opportunity for intellectual stimulation and cultural exchange between the village residents and the college. And I really think, for example, that this forum is an example of the kind of things that I support for the college and the village to do together. So I see that as a cooperative relationship. I think that there may be a distinction to be made between the approach that Betsy and I have to the relationship with the college. I don't quite view it as such an antagonistic relationship. I don't look at it that way quite. But I would say that I know what the village's interests are, and as mayor, I know how to represent the village's interests. And as Betsy also alluded, sometimes the village's interests and the college's are the same, and sometimes they're not. But I do feel that I know how to tell the difference, and I also can say that when the college has made proposals that have been unacceptable, I've stood up against them. I remind some people in here that at one point, the chief business officer, not Mark Coleman of the college, came before the Planning and Zoning Commission and proposed temporary housing for students in the form of prefabricated homes that were going to be put at the new apartments and at the land behind the KAC. And I would like to emphasize that I led the charge and joined the charge to keep that from happening, although they came before us twice. So there are other instances where I have also stood up to the college, where the college needs to be stood up to, including when they were renovating the northern part of Middle Path, and I stopped the construction until we had engineers for the village make sure the storm drain system was in place. And I also was recently responsible for requesting a traffic study downtown.
True, although my thought is not just the study, but I think we should actually block off the pass-through for several months and see how we adjust to that in the village. But that's a smaller point. I think it's clearly going to be we have to have a joint endeavor with the college and Gambier. We rely on each other. We are separate entities, but we share a lot of the same space, and we share a lot of the same interests and, frankly, talent. The village has an amazingly talented staff, which I think has been very helpful to the college, and certainly in reverse as well. The college has been very helpful to us. I do think, what I think will be interesting is that the village is reaching the end of a really wonderful 10-year term from an existing mayor, and now you have to choose a new one, which will bring a lot of interesting opportunities, I think, to Gambier. The college, in my sense, is also beginning to really do an outreach, to look out into the community. They're doing experiential learning in the greater community. I think sometimes having to figure out how to work with the very community that you live in is perhaps the most difficult challenge for an entity. We will have to compromise with each other. We will disagree on things. And I think one of the things that Gambier and Kenyon can do is model for the huge number of people that pass through our village for 4 years, for 10 years, who go on and will go on to run villages and towns and perhaps countries around the world after being here. Seeing how the college and the village learn to work together will be instrumental, I think, and could be a role model. I know it sounds highfalutin, but I do think we could set an example. But it will be the most difficult of the relationships. You've
touched on a little bit about water. So The village still struggles with water issues, water loss, meter issues. What would you do differently from what's being done now? Mrs. Kimmel.
I think that what I would like to say first is that I would do some of the things we're doing now, but do them more. We have utilized cameras underground in the pipes to try to find where there are cracks and the leaks that are so troublesome in such an old system. And I would encourage us to do more of that and explore whether there are other tools that can be used to discover the leaks underground that, again, are such a problem. We also are changing out a lot of meters, a lot of the large meters, especially at Canyon College, and have already discussed in the Streets and Utilities Commission and at Council possibly accelerating somehow the exchange of those meters to make sure that we're actually metering the water accurately. So I think that's a good program, another program that could be accelerated. I think that regarding the sewer system, the wastewater treatment plant, I think that we're in the process of improving that and studying that as well. And new initiatives are a little bit hard for me to brainstorm right now, but I think that we all know that water is paramount and it's expensive, and we should just keep looking at every single way we can to improve. Thanks.
Actually, I think maybe it's because I've seen water in more dire circumstances, but I think at the moment we are moving steadily along to bring greater control to our water system, greater efficiency to our water system. Anytime you deal with any one of the services that the village brings to the community, you have to trade off. So if we accelerate, let's say, increasing, there are over 60 2-inch or larger meters at Kenyon that we could replace all at once. They're about $1,500 a piece to replace, or we can do them more incrementally. That's something council is going to have to discuss. We have to decide where we put our resources. That might mean fewer instances of repaving a street, or perhaps of putting in a new sidewalk. And these are the kind of interesting conversations that a village needs to have. At the moment, as you can see, I feel so wishy-washy. I'm somewhere in between. I think we need to move ahead with water. I can tell you right now, I think we have done great strides in bringing our sewer plant up to snuff. It's running better than it has been in years. We have a very talented new staff member there. We also have a very talented village administrator who has been seeking out to improve water for the last 7 or 8 years, and we are doing an excellent job. And I don't know how close I am to 3 minutes. I want to tell you a great water story to tell you about the village. Okay. The night of the Super Bowl, which I was not here, I was in Warren, California, was an incredibly awful, rainy, icy, snowy day in January, if you remember. We had a major line break. The village administrator called the staff, and she said, I thought, they're not going to answer that phone. It's an hour before the Super Bowl is about to start. It's awful weather. Every one of them answered. Every one of them came out and spent 3 hours in the rain and the ice and fixing that water main. So in some sense, that's what I think of when I think of water, is that you've got good people to control it. And I'm sorry, I know I went over 3 minutes.
So do I get extra now?
Yeah. Sorry, Betsy.
That's okay. I would say what they said. Actually, I think we're making great strides with water, and we're keeping on top of it, and I don't know that I necessarily agree with accelerating, but I think it's worthy of discussion. Accelerating the replacement of meters. I know that there's been conversation with others about other ways to gauge how much our water leaks are. We were at the lowest, I think, in August that we've been in 5 years, for an August in 5 years, in terms of unknown water loss. So I think that speaks well of all of us and what we've all been doing, and your patience. And while you may not notice it, your water bills have been going, what you've been paying for water has been going down for the past couple of years. We've been raising the sewer rates because we have to deal with some sewer issues, but we've been lowering the water rates. So eventually, when the sewer plant when the sewer plant loan is paid off, which will be, I think, either by the end of this year or by next year,
Major loan payoff.
keep our fingers crossed, things will look a whole lot better on your water bills. I think we just have to keep a handle on the infrastructure. It's all aging, and as we do roads, maybe we need to look at where water lines are as sidewalks go in and think about replacing them when we need to.
Great. So transparency and communication within the village and within village government. How would you describe it, and what can be done to improve it? And this goes to Ms. Fuller.
Okay. We are, I think, pretty diligent to following sunshine law, so our meetings are open. So you have access to the village, but that doesn't mean that on the first Monday of every month you think, I wonder what the village is talking about. I'll go down and see. So how do we get that communication out to you in a way that might be more accessible? One of the things I would like to explore is to do more. We have a good, I think, useful website, but we could do perhaps more with that website by creating online newsletter that might be updated, or it could be even like a mayor's blog that might go up every week so people can have access to that. The only thing that we need to all remember is that not every villager has access to the internet and not every villager uses the internet. So we also need to keep in place the paper that we do produce. I don't know if y'all are all aware, but in the post office, there's a little kiosk that always has meeting information and discussion, our latest minutes up there, so you can check to see what's going on. So using the internet more might be an answer from me.
Well, I like that answer. That was a good answer. I still get the paper newsletter from the village, and we might consider doing that newsletter a little bit more often, I think. And I would have to say I'm hopelessly behind on social media, but I get it, and I think it would be useful. And whether it's a mayor's blog or a village council blog or whatever kind of a blog, or for that matter, something on some other form of social media, I think it's definitely worth exploring and it is a possibility. I know that usually mayors have open hours, and that's what I would do, would be have office hours, and people could come and ask. And goodness knows, everybody usually accosts me in the village about something that they want, and that's never going to stop. So I think that about covers it.
Well, I do agree with the statements about the website. I think we might need a little bit of extra help with the website because mostly our tax administrator has been responsible for it. And that's a lot of burden to bear with all the other responsibilities she has. So I think it might be worthwhile to look into how to upgrade our website. I also would like to see us, for practical matters, utilize the robocall system that we have. Now, we've utilized it mostly for boil orders and emergency orders, but I really think without intruding into your lives too much, we could use that system for some regular messages about things that are going on. And mostly what I'm thinking of in this example are garbage and recycling services. A lot of people were really noticing that we had a lot of trouble with garbage pickup earlier this year, but many people did not know that our local garbage service was acquired by the international giganto corporation of waste management. And so we were really struggling with being a small account at a very big place. And the reason I'm explaining all that is because I think that those collectors were making a lot of mistakes, and they weren't following the instructions that the village administrator was giving them about when they should be in the village and when they shouldn't. And so consequently, people in the village didn't know when the garbage pickup was going to be or not. And I use that as an example to say we could easily send a brief, efficient robocall message that says, you know, this week, remember, Thursday is Thanksgiving, so recycling will be picked up on X. And I think, again, in a limited way, but in a helpful way to citizens, we could utilize that call service more. Thanks.
As a slight plug to the Mount Vernon News, I hope that whichever candidate wins the election, that you continue the monthly column that we do have with your current mayor, and that is a nice way to communicate things to village residents as well. Earlier, Liz, you talked a little bit about kind of moving things out and getting better relationships outside into the county. Shared services might be a good way to do that, where the village can borrow equipment, borrow manpower, whatever, to get things done in a quick manner, in a more cost-efficient manner. So are there any examples that you can think of where the village might be able to use shared services?
That's a question for all of us.
It is for all of you.
Oh, okay.
It should be Mrs. Harris.
It's shared services with,
Oh, is Betsy going first?
Village, the city of Mount Vernon.
Who's going first?
I am.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Shared services. Well, I really don't know. I have to think about that. We do much of what we do in-house, and we are fortunate to having Kenyon around to do certain other things. I suppose there are times when, something came up recently about digging graves for the town, for Quarry Chapel and for I'm going to get it wrong, the Kokosing Nature Preserve. And there are times when we do not have the right equipment to do that, and we usually contract it out to something like Smalls, but I don't see why in an instance such as that we couldn't share with another municipality who might have something like that. I think that on those so rare instances when the power goes out in the village, those who have generators who could share, it happened, I know, many years ago while I was here at a graduation time, and the college shared with the village, and the village shared with the college generators. So I think something like that could happen, and I don't see why we couldn't share resources. Off the top of my head, those are the things I come up with.
Well, I'll go back to the topic that I seem to be the only one bringing up, but I am concerned about the emergency services in this village. And I do think that it is a common trend that could be embraced by this village to join in a more centralized delivery of fire services and EMT services. Our volunteers are great. There's no doubt that they do great things. But we really need to address this issue going forward. And I really think that shared services, this concept, especially regarding fire departments, is something that we could really embrace. And if I'm mayor, I really intend to pursue that because I think it's very important for the village, very important for all the residents and the college and the students who live here. We also, and both of the other candidates have been referring to this a little bit, we share services already, especially with College Township. We do things for them. They share our area where we keep mulch and stuff like that. We're letting them build a bin down there. So we do cooperate with College Township a lot, and I think that, again, I would use this as an opportunity, as Betsy did, to emphasize that we can cooperate with Kenyon, which is not another municipality, but here we are together. We can do things for one another. I think right now, I'm not thinking of any other specific shared services either, but I think that especially with the fire department, it's a really important concept to consider.
I agree. We did spend time in council talking about trying to do shared services with the fire department. And this is not to say we wouldn't still encourage, I hope, and maintain an active volunteer department as well, but we need we would like to join with a greater situation for fire services. But this is a little bit of an odd one, but one of my dreams would be, or one of the things I think would be interesting to explore, and you're talking about shared services, although it's not probably what you mean. We use MODA already, and we also use, if you'll notice, there's a van that will pick up and move students around the county. I would love to see our county, Knox County, become a sort of model in the United States for how do you handle transportation in a more rural area. There are folks who don't have access to a car in Knox County. There are folks who cannot drive in Knox County. There are folks who may choose not to drive. We have 1,600 students or villagers who may or may not have access to a car. And that's not just us. This is true of all the areas. Watching what has happened over the last 12 years with how we have linked up over the bike path which was very controversial when it was, or it's longer ago than 12 years, when it was first initiated. It's like, well, it's going in my backyard. I think it's become a real link with all of our villages. I'd like to see if we could think of an inventive way and some way that would work financially for us to provide more transportation services as a whole.
Well, let me ask something a little bit different. On the 4th of July, a lot of folks come out, a lot of kids come out from this community and others, and I wonder if you might say something about what that event means to you, what it means to the village, and supposing you continue the 10-year tradition of mayoral remarks, what you might say in your inaugural remarks next 4th of July.
Lucky for me, this comes first. I love the 4th of July here. Who doesn't love the 4th of July here? It is so awesome. It is so great. All the kids, all the dogs, all the young riders, all the people that get into the parade. The Citizen of the Year is always a big secret and surprise. It's, you know, how can you even mess with it? I mean, it's of course got to happen. That's the first thing. Continuing in the tradition of mayor's remarks, I have to, possibly apologizing to Kirk Emmert, many people have said to me that they would really like to see shorter mayor remarks. So, sorry, Kirk. That's, you know, I'm just the messenger. I'm just reporting what people have said to me. Nonetheless, I love the tradition of the remarks. I love the tradition of talking about democracy or the history of the 4th or any of these great, rich things that the 4th of July really should bring out for us. And so, you know, other people have spoken. I remember when Fred Bauman spoke. I mean, you know, so I think that actually, really, because I'm not 100% certain what I might say by then, I will say that I think we need to do something about the sound. I think part of what makes it difficult for people to follow the speeches is that the amplification of the voice is really bad and everybody's out in the street. And so maybe what I'll do is have a portable microphone and put it on and walk up and down the street and give my dynamic speech and really entertain the folks. I really don't know, but I love the 4th. Who doesn't love the 4th here? It's a wonderful, wonderful tradition. And I would hope to keep the tradition of also going down to the community center and having prizes and a picnic down there. It's been really great. Thanks.
Oh, okay. I'm pro short remarks. Now, I also have had the privilege of the last several years of announcing the Poet Laureate. I feel we should keep that tradition, and that might be our remarks for the year. So we would have that. How can I not be pro Citizen of the Year? I do think it's absolutely wonderful, and I have to tell you, for all the visitors that come in, and there's a lot of students from out of town, from all over the country are here for the 4th, and you can just see them going, this is what a small town 4th of July parade is supposed to be about. Now, I do feel, though, the last several years we have been lacking. We have not had a llama or a horse in years. We might think about a few floats. I don't want to get too big here, but I'm for short remarks, but maybe a few floats perhaps, maybe a competition. And I do miss the dog that rode on the Volkswagen, Skip, and I think he's no longer with us probably, but my dog is not able to do this, but it was a great tradition. So, and that I think is the heart of Gambier.
So you're saying you'll train out the dog to do that?
If I could just, pin Jenkins's paws down, perhaps. No, I don't think so. But a llama.
She done?
I'm done.
Well, first, what other parade in the world ends with a whimper and not a bang? Although the mimes were vastly lacking last year. I'm all about less speech and more parade. I do not see myself making much of any remarks. I think it's an interesting idea to have someone speak briefly on democracy. It won't be me. But mostly it's all about the Citizen of the Year, and it's all about the kids and the throwing of the candy and the noisiness of the fire engines, and it is the best parade in the world. And I've seen a few parades in the world, and it is just, it's my favorite holiday in Gambier is the 4th of July. And I describe it on my website as a parade where there are more people watching it than are in it, and you jump into it to be part of it, and then you jump back out. And the dogs and the kids and the tractors, I love the old tractors when we get those. So it's a fabulous thing. I just love the 4th of July parade, and I don't see myself making big, long speeches. But otherwise, I have no problem with poet laureates, and definitely not with Citizen of the Year, and we may have to find a new convertible, however.
I hope not.
Oh.
Well, thank you. That was fun. Let's jump back into some seriousness here. The organizational analysis report recently commissioned by the village spoke of disharmony, dissension, and mistrust within the village. What are your comments on the report and its recommendations?
Oh, okay. And this is something foremost in my mind at the moment because as head of the Police and Personnel Committee, we have been, we're doing some of the legwork, which will then go to council. This will be a conversation for all of council, and that's the way our committees work, by the way. We ask our committees to do some initial conversation and then bring it fully to council, and villagers are welcome to come to any part of those conversations. I think, actually, again, I know it is a bit of a romantic story in a way, but what I just told you about everyone responding to a phone call on probably the worst night you would ever want to, you don't want to leave your television set or your friends or your snacks, and you have the world's worst weather, and that staff went out and did that, and it was the whole staff. Some of whom are in the process of figuring out their relationships to each other, but I think they work as a team and have at heart what works for Gambier. They take their job seriously to a T. We are moving to put into some place some things that just haven't been, and there's no fault about it, but regular job evaluations, regular performance reviews, reviewing and relooking at job descriptions. Over this past year, we have been tidying up legislation about vacation pay. We face yearly or sometimes every other year insurance conversations. I think as important as the village is to bringing you services, it's also important that we're a good employer. And we are an employer, and I think we need to model ourselves as an employer, and I think that's the work at the moment that council that's going on in police and personnel, but that will be feeding into council.
Well, while I don't disagree that it was useful to have the organizational analysis take place, and it brought up some really interesting things that are being addressed, as Liz has mentioned, I think what prompted it was a bit of a tempest in a teapot, and for that I'm very sorry, and it caused a lot of problems, I think, and we are mending them. I think as Liz mentions, through looking at job descriptions and regularizing such things as performance reviews and things like that. I think some of the recommendations, including providing opportunities for staff to get further training and development, is incredibly vital and useful and a good thing to keep in mind. Let's see, what else was in there that I'm thinking of? Gosh, I'm not coming up with much more at the moment, but I think it is something that we probably should have done before, and should do on a fairly regular basis every few years. We might want to take a look, 7 years or so. But I think that we're making good use of the recommendations. I think there will be a healing process involved. A new mayor will walk into that and try and do the best that they can in terms of making sure that the staff, who usually do work very well together and have pulled through on many occasions to do what needs to be done, and I think we just need to give them the right positive attitude and atmosphere to make that continue.
I'd like to bring just a fact about this consultants report that we're talking about. Earlier this summer, The mayor recommended and the village council approved hiring a management consultant, a man by the name of Douglas Plunkett from Circuit Rider Management Group, who was actually someone known to the village, experienced, and actually helped us find our current village administrator. So that's the consultant's report that we are discussing. And it does, I really think it is a great tool for going forward. All of the personnel improvements that the Police and Personnel Committee have been getting into are very important. Also recommended in that report were a yearly audit of the wastewater treatment plant and some other things that will all be really good things to do in the village going forward. I think, in particular, the personnel changes that are recommended by this consultant's report, not personnel changes, that isn't really what I mean to say, the changes in the administration of personnel will go far towards mending any rough spots, I hope. I think a new mayor coming in, for better and for worse, I actually think a new mayor has a chance to mend any bridges that need to be mended. And I'm hoping that we can resolve whatever issues exist that are difficult by communicating freely and frankly and recommitting all of ourselves to being dedicated to serving the village, because I will emphasize what everyone has said, which is the village staff, people of long experience and dedication to this place. I think, you know, they've known one another long enough. They can come back together with the right leadership. Thanks.
Great. So we're going to move to the next phase. We're going to allow each candidate to have 1 minute to ask either one question to their two opponents or two short questions directed to each person. And we're going to mix up the order. First, Ms. Kimmel, then Ms. Hare, and finally, Ms. Foreman. So you can go first.
I have a question for each individual candidate. I would like to ask Liz, who, as we've been discussing, is the head of Police and Personnel, what thoughts she has about the crime wave that we feel we've been experiencing here in the county and here in the village over recent years. And I would like to ask Ms. Hare about solar energy, which she just mentioned recently. We've had earlier in the conversation what her thoughts are on solar energy in the village and where we might go with that.
I'll go first. I know it's if there's one thing that I think strikes to how we perceive ourselves in Gambier was the news that there had been a sort of sense of other crime that doesn't happen in a small village. One of the things that's true about us is that we know each other. So you can tell when I'm speeding, or you can tell when I haven't picked up after my dog, or you could probably see me. I haven't ever done this, lifting something out of the village market. But I have never done that, I promise, even when I was 8. I've thought about it. No. Sorry, village market. And I don't mean to make light of this. We do share deputy services with Mount Vernon. I think this is a conversation in general in and that's one of the reasons why I've been thinking about how do we react as a county to things. I had a conversation the other night, and I think actually what this brings home to me is how we need to talk about social services and help. My sense from this is that the substance abuse problem is greater than we think in this county, and we need to figure out how to deal with it.
Okay, solar. I think solar's a great idea. I'm contemplating it for some portion of my property somewhere along the line because I think it's wonderful. Alternative is great however we go about it. Whether it's at the wastewater plant or at the community center, we need to be thoughtful about it, I think, of course. But wherever we can put it, I think it would be a wonderful thing. We've been approached by someone to put solar panels down on some of the property that we own that's currently farmland, and I think this has possibilities. Someone also mentioned to me the idea of wind power, which might also be an interesting thought. So.
Ms. Hare, your question?
Oh, my question. Okay, well, this is the same question to the two of you. I don't have time to do this. I'll try and... No. I was going to phrase... I had it phrased a certain way. What accomplishment can you talk about as part of council, sorry, I'm not doing this well, that you think would illustrate how you would be as mayor? Did that make sense?
Sort of.
Is there an accomplishment you have done while serving on council that you could use to describe how you would be as mayor, what you would do as mayor?
Change the order. Why don't we have Ms. Kimmel go
Oh,
first?
sorry.
Oh, sure. This gives me an opportunity to talk about the recent example of this traffic study, which is something that is permitted for us to ask for by the zoning code when there are construction projects happening that touch on certain main arteries in the village, and of course the central part of town and Middle Path touches on all the arteries. And so I heard from council during council meetings the concerns about the proposal that Kenyon is making that we close the crossover downtown. And I heard those concerns, and I heard those concerns repeated again and again at several meetings. And it was my initiative to say that we should request a traffic study. And I think that bringing together the concerns of council and then making a decision about an effective step and way to go forward to solve the problem, knowing and having listened to what council members are saying, is an example of a skill that I can bring to the mayor's job.
Two things come to mind. Both are not singular efforts, if that makes sense, although I think of myself as helping to lead the charge. One of them was to shift the emphasis on sidewalks close into the village to further out in the village. I'm particularly pleased that we put a sidewalk down Woodside, which had a very deep culvert by it, which I thought was sort of dangerous, and it's been used a lot. Also, the sidewalk that runs out to the Gambier homes, which has provided an easier access into the village. I think in some sense it was smart for a while we were thinking of moving from the center out, and I think moving from the out in is in some sense how sidewalks will be of great use. So that I think of myself as having accomplished or helped to accomplish. I've also been a part of a number of hiring decisions, and I am now working with setting up a personnel handbook, and I think that that's an accomplishment.
Ms. Foreman, your questions?
Yes. Oh, mine are sort of fun. Outside of, to both of you, so outside of specific services, so I'd like to give the village a brand new water plant. Is there something that if somebody was able to grant you this wish, something that you'd love to see in the village that probably won't be possible with our budget or our abilities, that you think would be a wonderful change? And I'm going to credit, and also I don't think I'm going to steal your idea. One of the really wonderful ideas that Ms. Hare did was
Wait.
set up a dog park.
Oh, all right.
That's something that changed the way
okay.
our community interacts, and I think it's something that we wouldn't have thought of. We had the ability to do a dog park, so this could be big. So is there anything that comes to mind that you would like, yeah, it'd be cool to have that here?
Who, me first? Well, actually, it's a silly little daydream, but I would love to have the Mount Vernon and Knox County Public Library up on top of the hill.
Oh, wow.
I'd like it where people
You mean our branch?
Yes, our branch, the Gambier branch of the Knox County Mount Vernon Public Library, on top of the hill, where on Gaskin or Chase, somewhere there where people are just interacting with everybody else. They could pick up a book and go have lunch or go to the market, and it would just be a place that's right in the middle of everything.
Well, this might be a controversial statement with some people. They might not like this idea. But I really do dream of a couple more businesses or a couple more restaurants or a couple more little things of activity. The food truck idea, just a few more things going on in our little downtown. I don't know what they are, and it is an honest and important question. What our small community that rolls in population every year so drastically can really support? But if we could just have a couple more things going on there, and you know what would be really great would be a movie theater.
Oh, yeah.
A movie theater that would, play really cool, interesting, totally art house, or all kinds of other things. I've thought about that a lot. I don't know where it can go. So it isn't just money.
Great. Well, we're actually going to do closing statements now. 3 minutes. Ms. Foreman,
Okay.
Ms. Kimmel, and finally Ms. Hare.
I was thinking about a closing statement. I'm eager and looking forward to what I hope will be an opportunity to be mayor. I've spent a good part of my life interacting with the residents of Gambier and the residents of Knox County, and I enjoy it. But what comes to mind was a story that someone told me at a card group that I play at with some regularity. She said when she first moved here, which was a number of years ago, she was looking at her email, and there was a notice on the email that Ken Taylor, who some of you may remember, had become ill, and there was a call for helping to set up meals for Ken. And she said about 2 hours later, she got back to her email to say, yes, I would love to set this up. And there were already 2 months planned for him. And she said to herself, I think I'm going to like living here. And I do think that that's the part of Gambier that is hard to put your finger on in specifics, but very important to keep aware of. I'd like to see this village is in some sense the same place that I visited when I was 8 and I was visiting my grandparents who lived here, and yet completely different than that place I visited. And to keep that dynamic moving forward, we need to become greener, as Betsy's pointed out. We need to solidify and I think extend our relationship with our greater county. But we also need to keep Gambier a place where somebody wants to live. It takes a village to raise a child, they say, but we live in that. We actually live in a village that raises us. And I think we're a good model for all those people who are going to go out into the world and make public policy. I think having spent 4 years in Gambier is a good thing.
Oh, yes. So I'm really happy that we've had this forum. I really think it has been a great opportunity. And I would just like to close by reiterating this vision that I've been describing about Gambier over the next 4 years. First, if I'm elected mayor, I will work towards a village that remains friendly to residents, as we're saying, and visitors alike, with all of the richness that a college town can have. I do support a cooperative relationship with Kenyon College, and one that includes regular communication about college projects and fosters the inclusion of all village residents in all the college has to offer. And I want to emphasize that this forum, to me, is a great example of some of the cooperative things we can do. Of course, I also, secondly, see a village that is fiscally sound and well-run with reliable water delivery, as we've been discussing, and reliable treatment operations. I think implementing the consultant's report that we've been discussing is a wonderful way to get started towards doing that. And of course, we should continue every effort to improve the water system. Third, I also see the village, a village that has prompt and reliable emergency services. And again, I want to emphasize our volunteers do great work. I'm not saying that we don't have services, but I keep coming back to this issue because I think it's vitally important to the village that we improve our emergency services, and we explore every effort, every avenue towards being able to do that, because I think it's really something that we need. And by the end of my mayoral term, I would really like to see quality, reliable emergency services located here in Gambier. Finally, I've mentioned this a few times too, but I also see a village with a little bit increasingly lively downtown that serves all our residents and guests. This includes a lot of different things, the renovation of Middle Path that will be happening next summer. We want to make sure that we do take care of any traffic issues. I also would like to implement revisions to the zoning code to hopefully regulate food trucks that we can invite to come to town, and revise the zoning code also, which again sounds kind of boring, but we have issues downtown right now with truck deliveries. Many of you have probably noticed there are tons and tons more trucks coming, and they're big, and they sometimes are in a convoluted way really messing up downtown. So I would like to see that as an improvement downtown, and also I would like to improve all the crosswalks throughout the village and make sure they're well lighted and safe. I do believe that I'm the best candidate to accomplish these tasks. I want to say that at the end here. And I do ask for your vote, and in turn, I will use my skill and determination, which you have all seen, to accomplish great things for Gambier. Thank you.
Okay. Well, you've heard what everybody has to say, and you'll make your decisions. And I, for one, really appreciate, although I was horrified at the idea of this, but it's all good in the end. You all need to know what you're up to, what we're up to, and what we're doing. And I thank you all for your time and your patience and listening to all of these good questions and good answers. We have different perspectives on how we want the village to go, and it's your time to make your choices. I love Gambier pretty much the way it is, small, a little sleepy in the summer, and alive with 1,600 students and a multitude of academic, artistic, and athletic pursuits during the school year. While there's always room for improvement, I hope that any changes in the village will come with thoughtful consideration and not mar the essence of the place that attracts the best and the brightest to Kenyon and to Gambier. We are a village, and we all talk to one another, or we don't talk to one another, and we make it happen together. And it's only with your input that we know the directions that we need to go in. I think that Kaitchen has a lot of great ideas about where she wants, what she sees, and Liz also has the same. I have some. I don't have a big vision, though, I have to admit. I really like Gambier pretty much kind of the way it is. The movie theater is really good.
It's a really good idea.
Really good. That is definitely a really good thing.
I was thinking ice rink.
Well, yes. Well, the ice rink was almost
No,
possible.
ice rink.
No, the ice rink was almost possible.
No.
Anyway, so I think that we have opportunities and possibilities, and council is a good group. And whatever happens, if Kaitchen wins, Liz and I will be there. Keep her honest and make things happen. If one or the other of us win, who knows? Kaitchen might be
We
filling
hope
in.
that Kaitchen will still stay with us.
And we'll still be doing the same thing. And so I thank you for your time and appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Well, thanks to all of you for coming out, and I'll just ask everybody to go to the polls and thank our candidates for coming out tonight.
And
Thank
can you
you.
give them a message?